There comes a moment in every believer's life when the morning feels heavy, when the weight of yesterday tries to follow you into the light of a new day. But hear me today. One prayer can change the atmosphere of your morning, shift the frequency of your mind, and command peace to stand guard at the door of your soul. That's not poetic. That's prophetic. Because when you rise with the awareness of Isaiah 43, that the Lord has called you by name, and you belong to Him, every storm must submit, and every fear must bow. Beloved, the Word declares, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. Notice, He didn't say if you pass through, He said when, which means that divine presence does not exempt you from challenges, it empowers you through them. Every morning you wake up, you are not called to escape your circumstances, but to demonstrate dominion within them. God wants to teach you how to walk through the fire and not be burned. Not by changing your situation, but by changing you. You see, emotional and spiritual detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of response. It is the sacred discipline of saying, my peace is not negotiable. When you detach from what people think, from what yesterday stole, from what tomorrow threatens, you begin to operate in divine rhythm. You stop reacting and start reigning. Because spiritual authority begins where emotional dependence ends. Isaiah 43 is a reminder that God has already written your deliverance before your dilemma began. The waters may rise, but they cannot drown destiny. The fires may burn, but they cannot consume purpose. And when you know this, when you believe this, your morning becomes a declaration of sovereignty. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start declaring, this is happening for me. That's when prayer becomes power. Prayer, my friend, is not informing God of your pain. It is reminding your spirit of His promise. It is when your lips speak alignment before your life catches up. Every morning as you pray, heaven listens for agreement, not emotion. Because faith does not need feelings to function, it needs conviction to speak. The moment you detach from what you fear losing, you qualify to receive what you were born to carry. So when you wake tomorrow, don't beg for a better day, command it. Don't plead for peace, release it. Don't ask God to remove the waters. Walk through them with the awareness that you are fireproof, unshakable, and chosen. Isaiah 43 is not just a promise, it is a proclamation. You are mine. And when you belong to Him, nothing that touches you can define you. That is the one prayer that can shift your entire life. When you rise and declare, Father, I detach from what I cannot control. I trust what you have already written, and I walk in the authority of being yours. Heaven moves, peace reigns, and your morning becomes a throne room, where fear cannot enter, and faith takes the lead. Divine presence transcends circumstances. That is one of the deepest revelations a believer can ever embrace. It is the understanding that the measure of your peace is not determined by the stillness of your environment, but by the awareness of who is standing beside you in the middle of your storm. In Isaiah 43, God does not promise to keep you from passing through the waters. He says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. That one sentence defines the essence of divine relationship. It reveals that God's greatest gift to humanity is not protection from adversity, but presence in adversity. To know that He is with you is greater than being free from the challenge itself, because when His presence is recognized, fear loses its authority, doubt loses its argument, and anxiety loses its power to dictate your direction. When you begin to live with this awareness, you stop equating comfort with confirmation. Many people assume that if life feels easy, God must be pleased with them. Yet, spiritual maturity teaches that divine presence is most often felt in the heat of testing. The furnace was the very place where the presence of the fourth man appeared. The lion's den became the arena for angelic intervention. The storm became the stage for Jesus to walk on water. Every time God reveals His presence, it's not in the calm, but in the chaos. Because the evidence of divine favor is not the absence of struggle, it is the ability to remain unshaken in it. When you carry the awareness of Isaiah 43 in your spirit, you understand that God's presence is not seasonal, it is eternal. It is not conditional, it is covenantal. It does not waver when life wavers, it abides. Divine presence is not something that merely visits you, it dwells within you. You are the temple of the Holy Spirit, the habitation of His essence, the carrier of His divine energy. Yet so many believers live as though they are distant from God, waiting for Him to appear when crisis hits. They pray as though they must convince Him to show up, not realizing that He never left. His presence does not need to be invited, it needs to be acknowledged. The reason many people cannot sense God in their morning is because their awareness is still consumed by the shadows of yesterday. God's presence cannot be detected in a distracted mind. To perceive divine companionship, your spirit must quiet the noise of human reasoning. That is why prayer is not about length, it's about awareness. One moment of stillness, where you become conscious of His nearness, is enough to shift your entire atmosphere. When you awaken each day with that consciousness, you begin to walk differently. You stop measuring your confidence by outcomes. You no longer wake up fearing what may happen because your focus shifts from control to communion. You know that no matter what the day brings, you are never alone, and that knowing changes everything. The enemy's greatest weapon is not destruction, it is distraction. If he can distract you from divine presence, he can make your problems look larger than your provider. But when you return to awareness, when you whisper within, "You are with me," the very air around you changes. You become the calm in the chaos, not because circumstances improved, but because your perception did. The moment you perceive God in the midst of trouble, you reclaim dominion over your emotions. Your peace becomes a declaration of faith that the one who spoke galaxies into being walks beside you in your most ordinary moments. Divine presence also reveals divine purpose. When God says, "I will be with you," He is not merely offering comfort. He is establishing covenant. He is saying, "My presence guarantees your progress." The children of Israel could not move until the pillar of cloud moved, because movement without presence is motion without meaning. It is possible to be busy but not fruitful, active but not anointed, present in the world but absent from purpose. That is why the psalmist cried, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here." The mature believer knows that success without presence is failure in disguise. You can have influence, wealth, recognition, but if God's presence is not the foundation, it all collapses under the weight of emptiness. Divine presence is what gives your achievements substance and your calling direction. When you live aware of divine presence, even your pain becomes purposeful. You begin to realize that God does not waste affliction. Every fire you face refines something within you. Every flood exposes your foundation. Every delay trains your discernment. The presence of God does not promise immunity, it ensures transformation. When you are aware that He is with you, you interpret trials differently. You no longer ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this revealing in me?" Because divine presence is not about escape, it's about evolution. God is more interested in who you are becoming than in what you are escaping from. The awareness of His nearness keeps you steady in process, even when progress feels invisible. There is something powerful that happens when your spirit begins to mature into this revelation. You start to carry peace that cannot be explained. Others look at you and wonder how you can smile in the middle of chaos, how you can worship while waiting, how you can trust while losing. But you know something they don't. You know that God is with you, not in theory but in experience. You sense His quiet assurance guiding your thoughts, calming your emotions, strengthening your resolve. You stop trying to predict outcomes because you already trust the author. And in that posture of trust, Divine presence becomes your atmosphere. You begin to live from a place of stillness, not striving. You no longer chase peace, you host it. This is why Isaiah 43 is not just a passage of comfort. It is a manual for maturity. It teaches that divine presence is not reactive, but constant. God is not waiting for you to pray before He appears. He is waiting for you to perceive before you participate. Your spiritual sensitivity is the doorway to divine manifestation. The presence that carried Daniel through the lions, that stood with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire, that empowered Jesus to sleep in a storm, that same presence abides in you now. But to walk in it, you must train your heart to look for it, even when your environment contradicts it. You must learn to interpret storms as classrooms, not punishments. Every challenge is an invitation to deeper awareness. Every discomfort is a reminder that peace is not external, it's internal. When you understand that divine presence transcends circumstances, your entire spiritual rhythm changes. You no longer chase after signs, you rest in assurance. You stop looking for evidence and start walking in essence. You realize that the God who created the morning light has already ordered your steps within it. And when that becomes your consciousness, you rise every morning not asking, "Where is God today?" but declaring, "He is with me even here." That is the level of awareness where fear dissolves, anxiety weakens, and destiny accelerates. Because when you truly grasp that divine presence transcends circumstances, you no longer live for peace, you live from it. Detachment reveals dominion. This is a truth that separates those who merely survive life from those who reign in it. Detachment is not about indifference or denial. It is about spiritual mastery. It is the quiet confidence that comes when you no longer allow your emotions, possessions, or people to control the state of your soul. It is the awareness that your peace is too valuable to be negotiated with the instability of circumstances. To detach is not to stop caring, it is to stop depending. It is to love deeply, but from a position of strength, not need. It is to walk through seasons without allowing seasons to walk through you. The more attached you are to what you cannot control, the more you lose control over yourself. The less you cling to what is temporary, the more authority you carry in what is eternal. That is the divine paradox. You gain power when you release your grip. Every human being wrestles with the tension between holding on and letting go. We crave control because it gives the illusion of safety. We hold on to people, titles, possessions, memories, not realizing that what we cling to often becomes the very thing that limits us. Detachment is not the rejection of life's blessings. It is the proper placement of them. It is remembering that nothing you have defines you, and nothing you lose diminishes you. You came into this world with nothing, and yet you were already chosen, already purposed, already loved. That means your worth was settled before your circumstances began. When you detach from the need to prove, to please, or to possess, you rediscover your original design, a spirit, anchored in divine identity, not external validation. Emotional attachment often disguises itself as love, but true love is rooted in freedom. Anything that demands your peace as a price for its presence is not love, it is bondage. When your emotions become tied to outcomes, you live in a constant state of inner negotiation, happy when things go your way, broken when they don't. This is not dominion, it is dependency. Dominion is the ability to stand still when everything around you is shifting. It is the quiet posture of a soul that knows who it belongs to. Detachment is the fruit of that revelation. It is not an act of rebellion against the world, it is alignment with heaven's rhythm. Heaven is never hurried, never anxious, never reactive. It's simply Isa. And when your spirit matures, it begins to mirror that same stillness. There is a divine confidence that grows in the heart of one who has learned detachment. You stop fearing loss because you finally understand that nothing truly yours can ever be taken from you. What God ordains is sustained by His hand, not by your grasp. When you detach, you shift from possession to stewardship. You realize that everything in your life, your job, your relationships, your influence, is a temporary assignment, not an eternal identity. The moment you confuse assignment with identity, you begin to live in anxiety. But when you detach, peace returns, because you no longer define yourself by what comes or goes. You know that the same God who gives can also guide, and the same God who takes can also transform. Detachment also exposes where your faith truly rests. It is easy to say, "I trust God," until something you love begins to slip from your hands. In that moment, trust is no longer a word, it becomes a revelation. Detachment is not passive surrender, it is active trust. It is standing before uncertainty and saying, "I may not understand, but I refuse to panic. I refuse to lose my peace. I choose to believe that whatever leaves me is no longer assigned to me." That posture of trust confuses the enemy. He expects you to crumble when something breaks, but instead, you rise. You rise because you have learned that peace is not the result of what stays. It is the result of who remains. True detachment is impossible without divine perspective. When your eyes are fixed on the eternal, the temporary loses its power to shake you. People who lack spiritual sight live enslaved to moments. Every disappointment feels final. Every delay feels like denial. Every rejection feels like ruin. But when you live with divine vision, you see the pattern in the process. You understand that every subtraction is making room for addition, and every closed door is preserving you from counterfeit opportunities. Detachment becomes natural when you know the author of your story. You stop gripping every page because you trust the one who holds the pen. Many believers confuse detachment with emotional numbness, but they are opposites. Numbness is the absence of feeling, detachment is the mastery of it. It is not about silencing emotion but sanctifying it. It is feeling fully, but never being ruled by the feeling. It is crying but still choosing faith. It is losing but refusing to lose yourself. That is the strength of the mature soul. It can weep and worship in the same breath. It can grieve what left and still honor what remains. Detachment allows you to move through pain without becoming pain. It keeps you soft enough to love, but strong enough to let go. This principle also applies to spiritual life. Many pray for God to move, but secretly fear the movement He brings, because His movement always involves change. Sometimes God cannot elevate you, because your hands are full of what He's trying to replace. Detachment is the key to divine promotion. When you release, He can restore. When you surrender, He can shift. But as long as you cling, you delay transformation. Every new level requires a new letting go. Abraham could not discover the promise until he detached from his familiar land. Peter could not walk on water until he detached from the safety of the boat. Jesus could not redeem the world without detaching from the comfort of heaven. Every great act of faith begins with divine detachment. There is also a psychological freedom that flows from spiritual detachment. When you no longer live in constant reaction to people's opinions, you begin to think clearly, decide boldly, and move purposefully. Most of human stress is the result of over-attachment to approval, to image, to control. But the moment you stop needing to be understood, you start walking in wisdom. The moment you stop demanding that people validate your path, you start hearing God more clearly. Detachment clears the noise of the soul. It opens the spiritual frequency where divine instruction becomes audible again. That's why those who walk in true authority often seem calm even in crisis. They are not detached from responsibility. They are detached from anxiety. To live in detachment is to reclaim your God-given dominion. Dominion is not loud, it is not frantic. It is the quiet assurance that no external event has the power to dictate your internal world. It is the realization that your emotions serve you, not rule you. Detachment restores that order. When your emotions obey your faith instead of your fears, you begin to manifest spiritual